Good morning. You're watching Trading Hour on CNBC TV 18. I'm Ekta Batra. With me is Reema Tendulkar, and it's turning out to be a session where we are singing the same tune as the global markets. So the Nifty is currently under pressure, down around 0.6%. We had the US markets, which were at 2018 closing lows after the Fed commentary more than the decision, which really weighed in terms of sentiment for the markets. Mid-caps, however, being quite resilient for our markets, were absolutely flat at this point in time. Remember that the mid-caps have outperformed on a week-to-date basis as well. Even keel in terms of the advanced decline ratio. Lot of stocks in focus. The Nifty PSU Bank Index, which outperformed yesterday, so that one's under pressure. Bharti Airtel, Jet, both of these companies would be considering fundraising. So a lot to discuss over the next 1 hour. Hi, Reema.
Hi, Ekta. For one, it's profit booking after a heady 7-day rally in which the benchmark indices rallied close to about 4.5%. That's one. And secondly, despite this cut of close to about 0.6% that we can see on the Nifty and the Sensex, we're still outperforming the global markets. So take a look at Hang Seng. That's down close to about 1.5%. The Japanese markets are down more than about 3% So there is an outperformance which is taking place compared to the rest of the Asian market. And that's been the trend for the last many days. If you look at the performance so far in the month of December itself, the Nikkei, that's the Japanese markets, is down close to about 9%. The Hang Seng has lost about 3.5% to 4%, whereas the Indian markets have been flat, in fact, mildly in the green as well. So that outperformance that we've seen in the last few days compared to the rest of the global markets has continued even today. That said, it's profit booking that we can see after a big run-up in the last 7 days. Let's invite Sudarshan Sukhani to get a sense of how you should approach the markets technically and what trade you should take on. Sudarshan, as we speak, the mid-cap index is putting in a bit of a comeback from the early lows. Even the Nifty is not fallen too much compared to the global context. How would you approach trade now?
Good morning again. We approached trade by assuming that we had a very smart and handsome rally from 10,400 to 11,000, and that rally is now likely to enter into a correction. That correction can either be a sideways move or a dip. My sense is it will be both. So I expect the Nifty to come lower levels, lower than where it is now, at least 10,750 and maybe lower. So the trade since the morning has been to go and sell the Nifty with a stop at 11,050. That's the trade, and I think, I hope that the trade will work out. So we are bearish for the next 2 or 3 days or 4 days on the Indian market. Mid-caps have outperformed earlier, and there are selected mid-caps which can do well. But when the broad market is coming down, it's not very easy. Still, among the mid-caps, the pharma sector seems to be cheerful. So my suggestion today is to buy Ajanta Pharma and focus on pharma and IT for whatever buying opportunities you want to take. Apart from Ajanta Pharma, I have two short... I'm sorry.
No,
I have two short
sells
also.
You, yeah. Go ahead.
Two short sells. One is Vedant and the other is Z. Both are intraday shorts, but metals are in a downbeat scenario. So I would expect lower levels to come. Yes, please.
Sudarshan, morning. What about a couple of these stocks? Something like an Ujjivan, which has done well this week. It's up 11%. Yes Bank, which is trending higher today, but it's just about subdued on a week-to-date basis. And Central Bank of India, which has rallied quite significantly, obviously on hopes of what could be announced with regards to PSU Bank recapitalization. That stock has picked up 14% week-to-date. Yes, Central Bank and Ujjivan.
Well, see, Ujjivan is rallying on perception of news, not even news. I think the charts do not suggest any significant up move here. It's best if you have it, it's best to take profits and get out. I would not buy it. Central Bank of India again is part of that PSU Bank Rally. We have the news. I don't think it's going to make much difference. I'm very sorry, but again, this is not a buy. And Yes Bank is certainly not a buy. It keeps on going up and down, but it's not making significant progress in prices. Yes Bank needs a lot of base building before it can actually go up. So for me, all three names are not buying opportunities.
Okay, by the way, keep your eye on Kotak Mahindra Bank. It's moved above that 200-day moving average of 1,220, and it's climbing higher as we speak. There you can see, in the green now. Let's move on and get in the Twitter queries. It's Usha who's written to us. She has 447 shares of PC Jewelers. She's bought it at a price of 166. And she wants to know whether she should hold on to it or sell. So she's making a big loss, Sudarshan. PC Jewelers has had a rough year. It's lost about 80% of its value in 2018 itself. What would you recommend when you're making such a big loss?
It's very difficult to recommend because my recommendation has never been to buy PC Jewelers. So for me, it's difficult to imagine somebody holding that share. But if you have it, then you must plan to exit it. Sell it out. Now, when you want to sell out, whether you can time it a little better, it's very difficult to answer. But be sure you want to get out of it. So sell it whenever you can.
Okay, all right, Sudarshan, we're going to let it go on that note. Thanks very much for joining in and speaking with us, and we'll touch base with you as the day goes on. But let's focus on a couple of stocks which are buzzing around today. In fact, on top of the list is PSU banks, which are in focus on the back of the news that the government is set to pump an additional 41,000 crore rupees to recapitalize PSU banks in order to boost liquidity. According to sources, the government will seek the parliament nod today itself. Sapna Das is joining in with all the details. Sapna, go ahead.
This is an additional amount that the government will be seeking the parliament's nod today. Yesterday we had said very clearly around 40,000 crores. So we are very near to that number. 41,000 crores is the additional requirement which will be coming through in the supplementary today. Having said that, the overall envelope has been 1.45. 80,000 crores worth of recap bonds, FY18 and FY19, 65,000 crores worth of recap bonds. And let me also just, reiterate this, that out of the 65 also, out of the existing envelope, 42,000 crores worth of infusion still remains. So that also is going to unfold, and along with that, this enabling provision will kick in of an additionality. So if you just look at the current fiscal, government will now be looking at a recap plan of around 1.05 lakh crores, and that's a big number to speak about. As we have just said yesterday also, the intention of the government is very clear to keep the lending process on, despite 11 banks being under PCA, and even on that framework, there is a tremendous improvement in many of the indicators that are being spoken about. Some names of the banks we had put out yesterday, so that's a process that's still ongoing. So they will have this 42,000 crores left out of the current 65 for this year, and plus an additionality of 41,000 crores. Now, in terms of which bank gets how much, as you will recall, even when the government had done the same plan in Jan 2018, if you remember, 4th Jan or 5th Jan was the supplementary where they had announced this entire thing. The amounts had come out, but the first time when capital infusion had been cleared by cabinet. So, later on they had announced which bank gets how much. So that is how it is going to follow even this time. Once they have a quick fix on the numbers, which bank gets how much, we decide that one in time. This is being done both to maintain regulatory and growth capital.
Okay, thank you, Sapna, for that. So it'll take care of provisioning, leave some room for growth, as well as enable some banks to get out of the prompt corrective action. Let's move on and talk about the aluminium pack, because metal stocks are in focus. LME aluminium has sunk to a 16-month low. This is after US has said that they will withdraw sanctions on the Russian aluminium producer, Rusal. Nigel is here to put things in context. Nigel?
Well, early this morning, in fact, the Trump administration, they said that they're going to lift the Rusal sanctions that were imposed in April 2018 itself. Why is that? Because Russian billionaire, that's Oleg Deripaska, he's agreed to cut his stake in the main company to sub 50%. And that was the condition for them to remove these sanctions on Rusal. The sanctions, remember, were imposed in April 2018, and that was on the back of Russian President Putin and his associates and the alleged interference in the US election. So on the back of that, this was imposed. What's the impact today? Aluminium prices have fallen to a 16-month low. Now, the sanctions were imposed way back, but after that, there was softening of its stance. So initially, the US government said that the sanctions are imposed on Rusal and they cannot do business whatsoever. But later in April itself, they softened their stance. They said that if Oleg Deripaska can cut his stake to sub 50%, then they can in fact do business. So after that, we have seen that the prices in fact have gradually started coming in lower. What's the importance of Rusal, and why we saying that that aluminum prices will move lower? In 2017, it produced nearly around 3.7 million tons. If we're looking at the total aluminum markets, around 62 million tons approximately. So in terms of the total aluminum market, it contributes nearly around 5%. But you look at it ex-China, then it contributes more than 10%. So that's why Rusal is a fairly large producer of aluminium in the globe. And I think the chart should come up for you, and that will tell you the picture and as well as the flow of events. If you're pulling up the aluminium prices from April 2018 to date, you'll see that early April it was sub $2,000 per ton. Then, in fact, it did spike up by nearly around 20-30% to around $2,700 per ton. That was when the sanctions were imposed. After that, the US softened their stance. So, in the next 5-6 days, it came down back to around $2,200 per ton. And from there onwards, it's been under pressure. Today as well, the sanctions have been removed, but already the price correction has been done. So, at around $1,900 per ton, that's where most analysts are expecting it to base out. Stocks that are impacted: Nalco is taking the hardest hit, that's down 4%. Vedanta, roughly around 30-35% of their total revenues comes in from aluminium. And Hindalco actually is relatively protected because now more a part of their business are into, are coming in from Novelis as well as from the copper business. But the reason that Nalco is getting the hardest hit is because the play is on alumina. And alumina prices have come down to around $400 per ton. I remember I was talking to the management of Nalco. The price was at $700, $600, $500. So the bigger correction on Nalco is because it gets 80% of its EBITDA from alumina, and alumina prices have corrected. But this is a sentiment negative because more amount of supply. In short, it doesn't really change things. But otherwise, if you were a consumer of aluminium, you would be afraid to do any kind of business with Rusal because you're saying tomorrow if the sanctions are imposed, then you'll be stuck with all that aluminium, or you may not get that aluminium whatsoever. So on the back of additional supply, aluminium price is lower, and those are the stocks that are impacted.
Okay, all right, Nigel. Thanks very much for that. So those are the stocks in focus on account of alumina as well as aluminium prices. But the other stock in focus has to be Bharti Airtel. There's going to be a board meet in order to consider fundraising. Reema, tell us more.
Yes, we understand the board meeting should start post-lunch, so closer to 2:30. But the intimation to the stock exchange and what finally has been announced will only happen post-market hours. Now, there is, as Ekta pointed out, there is a board meeting today where they will consider fundraising. Important for Bharti, one, because its debt is at 1.14 lakh crore as of September. And secondly, Moody's had kept the ratings on watch for a possible downgrade due to a deterioration in the company's fundamentals on account of heightened competition in the sector. There were reports in November which indicated that the company could look at an equity fundraising of 12,000 to 15,000 crore rupees, which could be via a fresh issue via rights or a private placement to investors, and the promoters too are likely to participate in it. The other monetization plans that Bharti has already announced include the Africa business IPO, and secondly, further monetization or reduction of stake in Indus. Now, that is known. Today's focus is likely to be on whether they will tap the equity route to further bolster their balance sheet and make sure there is no investment downgrade which comes in on their ratings. So important for Bharti. The stock has been a big underperformer. It's lost more than 40% of its value in 2018.
Okay, well, thanks, Reema, for that. Well, that's not the only stock in focus on account of fundraising, or maybe more. Jet and their board is meeting today as well. Kritika is here to tell us what exactly is on the agenda. Kritika, quite a crucial board meet. Okay, well, we've lost Kritika, but we'll just get back to her in just a bit.
There's actually another board meeting which is scheduled today, and that is ONGC, where they will be considering a buyback. Now, if the company does a 25% buyback, which they can do with a shareholder nod, then they can raise up to 50,000 crore rupees. If they do a 10% buyback, then they raise close to about 20,000 crore rupees. The cash in the company's books, I think Sonal had indicated some time back, is about 7,000 to 8,000 crore rupees, though they have very large investments. But that's going to be crucial because that's also money which will go back into the government's kitty. So that's going to be the third board meeting, that of ONGC, which we will track closely today.
Yes, and in fact, Wockhardt is meeting in 2 days as well with regards to some fundraising. So a lot of board meets which are probably taking place ahead of Christmas and New Year's. But nonetheless, Kritika is back with us now. And Kritika, tell us, how crucial is this board meet and what's on the agenda for Jet?
All right, so there are a couple of things on the agenda for this board meeting. One is the possible fundraising or equity infusion by Etihad. Remember, there were talks of Etihad and Tata's as well. Etihad already has 24%. So if Etihad has to look at an equity infusion, they hike it up to 49%. There are a lot of variables over there. Tata Group has also been in talks, but the talks with Tata Group have been slightly slow. So the status of conversation with these two players are going to be discussed. What's the road forward is going to be discussed. discussed. The second point is the cost-cutting measures. What are the cost-cutting measures that have gone through till date? And the amount that they have been able to cut down on in terms of cost, in terms of expenditure is going to be assessed, and road forward for the next 3 months, next 3 immediate months is going to be discussed in terms of what are the other cost-cutting measures. Now, there has been an official comment that has come in from Jet confirming that SBI is undergoing a forensic audit. Remember, SBI is the lead banker to Jet Airways. So the status of that forensic audit, what is going to be the management and the board's takes here is also going to be discussed. There was the possibility of asking SBI for another round of fund infusion, but since there is a forensic audit, that seems unlikely. So will Etihad come in? How exactly will the structure work? All of that is going to be discussed, and the board's official stance is also likely to be finalized. Remember, there are Etihad directors also on the board. So we should get some clarity onto what Etihad's stance is going to be in that board meeting as well. So very critical meet. It should begin by noon, and by roughly about 3 to 4 o'clock, again, post-market is when we are expecting some kind of clarity from our sources.
Okay, it needs some good news badly. Delayed salary, laid off staff, grounded planes. It's been hit by a barrage of bad news. Let's slip into a very short break on that note. On the other side, we'll discuss what's buzzing in the commodity space. Manisha Gupta and Vandana Hariya joins it when we return.